COVID mandates, the dominoes continue to fall. We're seeing them all over the place. Today, we're going to talk about Philadelphia. We're going to bounce over to San Francisco, poke into Indiana and see what they're doing with their schools. And then Joe Biden is sort of floating this idea about interstate vaccine mandates. So if you want to go from one state to another, you got to show your papers to whoever they set up there at your new checkpoints in America. So we're going to go around the country. We're going to jump off from Philadelphia, check out Philly. Now, they have new indoor mask mandates. Now, these are new restrictions. They've got rising cases, okay? And so we've seen this in season 1 of COVID. We saw that it started sort of in New York, then it went over to LA, and then it slowly started spreading around the rest of the country like a disgusting virus. All of these mandates, all of these new orders, just slowly boiling that frog in the pot. And here we are. Philadelphia started. They're saying we got new mask mandates. It's going into effect at midnight on Thursday. Face coverings now must be worn inside the business unless you are vaccinated, right? So a lot of this stuff is now being orchestrated to incentivize people to go get vaccinated. Either put a mask on, get tested, or go get vaccinated. And here Philadelphia is now creating an incentive to encourage people to vaccinate. Otherwise, you got to wear a mask. So for now, the city is going to require masks indoors at all locations. Also for indoor dining as well. Now, the Supreme Court, that was in Philadelphia, and that's just for the mask mandates, right? So we're going to kind of go in terms of severity here. Masks, then we're going to talk about the vaccine mandates. This is taking place out of Indiana. What took place here was Indiana University, they created a requirement that said that all students must be vaccinated against the coronavirus. And so once Indiana came out and they did that, there were a bunch of upset students and they said, nope, that's ridiculous. We want to go and sue the school because we want some exceptions. And so they filed that lawsuit. The lawsuit went up to the Supreme Court. Coney Barrett, one of Trump's most recent appointees, received the request because she is the judge that oversees the Seventh Circuit. It appears that she made the decision on her own, but she did not refer to anybody else, but she rejected the lawsuit. So the students filed the lawsuit and they said, we want the vaccine mandate to be thrown out. Lawsuit worked its way up to the Supreme Court. They filed a request for the Supreme Court to throw the vaccine mandate out. We don't want that anymore. And the case worked its way up to Coney Barrett because it came out from the Seventh Circuit. She's in charge of that court, and she just denied their petition. And this is what it looks like. We don't even have an explanation for it. But over from the court docket, Ryan Classen versus the Trustees of Indiana University. This is on appeal from the Seventh Circuit. And the only thing you can see here on August 12th was application denied by Justice Barrett. No, it's denied. Right? No reason, nothing in there. That's all she just said. This was the first case about vaccination requirements that reached the Supreme Court. A federal district judge and a unanimous panel previously rejected the request that the requirement be put on hold. And so the lower courts, they relied on a prior ruling from a case from 1905. The case was Jacobson versus Massachusetts. The court allowed the government to have a requirement that said people must get vaccinated against smallpox or pay a fine. So there's this prior case from 1905 that says, the government can make you get a vaccine. And so they based their opinion here on that 1905 case. And lawyers now say that, no problem at all. What the Supreme Court did here is actually in line with prior precedent. The law in 1905, for example, didn't have any exceptions for religious or medical reasons, but the university does. And second, the requirement only applies to Indiana. So the students who filed the lawsuit are actually filing a case where they have less of an ability to get an exemption or an exception here, or for the court to find in their favor, because there was a prior case from 1905 that was actually even more strict than what the university is doing. So what the university is doing now is actually less strict than something that was already approved by the court in 1905. So the court, of course, is going to look at this and say, no, perfectly fine. Mandate all you want. And so the reason I point this out is just so you can sort of see where this is going. Okay, if you're expecting the Supreme Court or any court to come out here and find on the side of liberty or freedom, you are out of your mind. That is not going to happen. It has not happened, and it will not happen. We're already seeing that from other courts around the country. They're all going to start falling in line, and they're going to start siding with the federal government, even over local officials. We're having that happen here in Arizona. There's an anti-mask mandate that schools can't mandate it. The CDC said the schools need it, so schools are now following what the CDC says over what the governor says. So when the courts get involved with that, what are the courts going to do? Side with the CDC or side with the governors? Side with the people who have put rules in place that limit these draconian COVID requirements, or side with the federal government? They're going to side with the federal government. They're going to allow the government to do whatever the hell it wants because they are part of that. All right. Now, it says people who do not want to be vaccinated may go elsewhere, not go to Indiana. And so this is where this is trending. They're relying on a 1905 case, and Amy Coney Barrett, a great conservative hero, no, that's fine. Mandate it up, no problems at all. And schools are a little bit different, right? Schools, there's sort of a history of vaccination and vaccine mandates, and you get your shots before you go to school. It's a little bit different from some other things. So Amy Coney Barrett might be distinguishing this case and only applying that ruling only to schools, because this is a new concept now outside of the school environment. But San Francisco, being San Francisco, they're going to mandate it anyways, just like New York. And in fact, this is even more strict than New York. San Francisco now mandates proof of full COVID vaccine at indoor venues. So I think New York was just one jab. This, you got to have two. You got to be fully vaccinated. They're going to require residents and visitors to prove they are fully vaccinated for a number of indoor activities, things like restaurants, cafes, bars, gyms. We have Mayor London Breed announced this on Thursday during a press conference. So just comes out, issues a new order. You are now under control of dictator London Breed. The order will require businesses to verify vaccine status prior to entry. It's going to require businesses, so non-governmental entities, private people running their private lives, running their private business. If you want to do business with somebody else, if another private citizen says, I want to come into your store, you now have an order from some Looney Tune in San Francisco that you have to engage in these activities because she said so. This goes into effect now on August 20th, 1 week from today. San Francisco is the first major U.S. city to enforce full vaccination to receive services. New York recently began a similar requirement, but only needing one dose. If you have a cell phone and were vaccinated in California, the state has a way to access your information digitally. So you don't need to carry the paper copy here. Tap here to get your digital vaccine record. If you're in the Bay Area, just tap that deal and you can just go and get it. And so this is really complicated because we know that a lot of African American people in rural areas have a difficult time getting on the internet, according to Joe Biden. So I just don't know how they're going to get an app on their phone and digital, all that stuff. So that's very, very racist that they're doing that, which is just par for the course because we're going to see here in a minute, New York is also very racist with their vaccine mandates. But let's take a listen into this mayor from San Francisco who's going to come in and mandate that all these private businesses do whatever she says. Here she is.
So why are we here today?
Yeah.
Well, part of it is we're taking our steps around vaccinations just a little bit further.
You okay?
And starting August 20th, you will need proof of vaccination in businesses for your customers in high contact areas like bars, restaurants, clubs, theaters, entertainment venues, indoor gyms and fitness,
coffee
and
shops,
large indoor events with more than 1,000 people. By October 13th, employees at these establishments must be vaccinated as well. So all of the employees need to show proof of vaccination by October 13th to their employer. Now, to be clear, this will not include people or kids who are under the age of 12 because they can't get vaccinated. So what we don't want folks to think is a family of...
All right, so she's going to go on more ranting about whatever. So we have a new, apparently this woman is the mayor, not a doctor, not a medical provider, nothing, and has just mandated to you, right? If you're a business owner, I happen to be a business owner. So this lunatic comes out and says, Rob, you can't run your business anymore. I don't live in San Francisco, obviously, but if this pernicious virus of totalitarianism continues to spread throughout our country, eventually it's going to land on my doorstep. And there is no vaccine for this other than our voices and speaking out and building communities. So when it does come here, we're going to have to figure out what to do about that. But here, the theory would be she would just, I get an order now. and I have to go to my employees and I have to say, you all do this. And they say, well, Rob, I've got this condition or this condition or this condition. And I say, that's just too damn bad because Mayor Looney Tunes over here said that I have to do this in order for me to continue to run my business. So you have to go do this now. And it is a very, very disgusting thing that our elected officials are mandating from us. It is the antithesis of freedom and the ability to conduct your lives and pursue happiness to your own liking. We'll see where it goes. We already see the Supreme Court came out. Yeah, you can do it in schools. So what's the difference between schools and this place? And what's the difference between this variant and the next variant? And what's the difference between this virus and the next virus? And how many different booster shots are they going to have to require you now? Do you have to show them every time you get your booster shot? And what if they also want to see your other information? And folks, you might listen to that and say, that's insane, right? But the same people who are saying that all of this stuff was going to happen now, like I was saying 18 months ago, screaming from the rooftops, we're going to do this again. Do you think we're going to lock down for 15 days? Are you nuts? Of course it was never going to be 15 days. It's always a snowball of power rolling down the hill, gobbling up everything in its path. And we are in the middle of it. We are right in the path of the snowball, watching it come down. Oh, here it comes. And there's not much that we can do about it other than continue to speak out, which is what we're doing. And I appreciate your support here. All right. So now Joe Biden is still unsatisfied. They have not seized all of the juice out of our corpses yet. And so what they're going to do now is think about what else they can do. Brainstorm, how else can we just beat our own citizens into submission just day after day after day without causing too much backlash? We got to find this nice little balance where we can strip away a lot of their liberties without them getting too upset about it. It's sort of like the frog in the boiling pot that we talk a lot about here. You don't want to turn the temperature up too much too quickly, otherwise the frog's going to jump out. So Biden is now having to balance this out, and he's not very mentally competent, so he's having some difficulty here. It says from U.S. News here by the Associated Press that Biden is eyeing tougher vaccine rules without provoking the backlash. So just turn the temperature up just a little bit so that nobody freaks out about it. Zeke Miller wrote this, said that when the pace of vaccinations in the U.S. first began to slow, President Biden backed incentives like $1 million cash lottery, if that's what it took. But as new coronavirus infections soar, he's testing a tougher approach. In just the past 2 weeks, Biden has forced millions of federal workers to attest to their vaccination status or face onerous new requirements. He's met with business leaders at the White House asking them to do the same. Meanwhile, the administration is taking steps towards mandating shots for people traveling into the U.S., and they're weighing options to be more assertive at the state and local level, including potential support for school districts imposing rules to prevent the spread of the virus. Over here we have the White House still has no plans to develop a vaccine passport infrastructure, no plans. The Biden administration had promised to share frameworks for verification systems, but let that up to the private sector, in part because of political sensitivities. Still, while more severe measures like mandating vaccines for interstate travel or changing how the federal government reimburses treatment have been discussed, the administration worried they would be too polarizing for the moment. See that right there? That's not to say it won't be implemented in the future as public opinion continues to shift, because the vaccinations are being used as a means to restore normalcy, which is total nonsense, right? Is that the case at all? We've had vaccinations out all over the place. No normal. All right, Lawrence Gonston says something. Yeah, he said he's really going to have to use all the leverage the federal government has and indeed use pressure points, says this good little bootlicker, Lawrence Gostin, a professor of health law over at Georgetown. I think there are a few that he can do, but he hasn't done yet. Yeah, so a good little totalitarian, of course, law professor at Georgetown, very intelligent, is saying, yeah, we got to bring the full leverage of the federal government down to bear on the necks upon all the citizens out there who are just enjoying a little bit of their freedom out there. That's what law school's like. There you go. That's a good example of that. So enjoy it. Over here now, the most racist mayor in the entire country, Mayor Bill DeBlasio from New York City, is mandating that there are vaccines in order for you to engage in New York City. He has this new program called the Key to NYC and said specifically, if you want to participate in all the great things that NYC has to offer, very simple. All you have to do, just go get a vaccine. Just go get a shot. And if you don't do that, guess what? You are a sub-citizen. You no longer get to enjoy all the privileges that the vaxxed people get. You are sort of in this subclass, kind of a second class, kind of a peasants or slaves or whatever it is. And it is now causing some people to ask about this. Who is this going to impact? The main narrative has been that these are all a bunch of idiot, redneck Trump supporters who are just a bunch of, hayseed, white supremacist, domestic hicks out there who just don't know any better than themselves because we're all too busy drooling all over ourselves to think for ourselves. And so they have to just keep smacking us in the head with their vaccine sales pitches day in and day out on every single show. You see all the time, get your vaccine, vaccine salesmen everywhere you look. It's disgusting. But now we are asking ourselves, all right, is that really the case? Is it really a bunch of these, what the media is claiming, these unsophisticated people out there who are having questions about some of this stuff? No, it's not the case at all. In fact, it is going to be disproportionately impacting young black people in New York. Here is the New York Times. The New York Times, which is a newspaper that presumably is in New York, would have a good idea of what this might be doing to the people there. Only 28% of young black New Yorkers are vaccinated. So if, as Mayor DeBlasio said, you are not allowed to participate in the government or in anything that New York has to offer unless you're vaccinated, well, you're going to have a pretty big swath of young black people who are left out in the cold. A construction site safety manager in Queens said that as a black man, he was more worried about the prospect of being stopped by the police than he was about getting COVID. Graduate student in Bronx also not gotten vaccinated. Civil rights activist said that he was suspicious when they were prioritizing minority neighborhoods. So the racist Mayor de Blasio now going to have a huge portion of young black people in New York City who are just left out to dry. Very racist. Now, some restaurant owners in New York City say, no, it's not going to work for us. I don't think we're going to be the vaccination police, says this guy. Starting next week, it's going to be required, but Generoso, we have Mary Josephine Generoso, says whether you're vaccinated or not, you're welcome. She's the manager at Pastoreria Roca's Bay Ridge. What a name. So she's a true American hero here. Says there's a protest in the window of the restaurant. It reads, we do not discriminate against any customer based on race, sex, gender, creed, vaccinated or unvaccinated. All customers who wish to patronize are welcome in our establishment. I just do not feel that we're able to sit there and ask customers to show if they've been vaccinated or not, she said. Yeah, so this got me thinking about a concept in the law about you can be legally right? You can pass whatever laws in the world you want, but there's a very important question here. And it's about enforceability. It's about whether you can enforce those laws, right? The federal government can say, yeah, vaccine mandates. Your state government can say, yeah, vaccine mandates. But can they enforce that everywhere you turn? No, they can't. It's not possible. And that's why Rand Paul and other people were saying, well, now it's time. Now it's time to just disobey, right? Civil disobedience. I'm not encouraging that. Rand Paul said something along those lines. But it is a moment where you can introduce friction to these little interactions and see what happens as a result of it. See whether they continue to comply with these government tyrants. Now, we have, again, to shatter that notion that it's all the uneducated, red MAGA people who are not getting vaccinated. It's not accurate. A new study came out, said that the percentage of each group that is somewhat vaccine hesitant is primarily with the PhDs. There you go, right? So the highest level, you sort of see this reverse bell curve here. So you've got this high school or less. They don't want to get vaccinated. Why? Well, they probably are young, or they made that decision for whatever that reason is, right? Well, the people who mostly get it, these are most of the people that you probably see on Twitter. These are most of the journalists out there who think that they're very smart, right? Because they got a master's degree. They're like, I got a master's degree. You're like, so what? What does that do for you? Nothing. But it's a master's degree. And they're like, well, I write for this art. I got a journalism degree. And therefore, and so it's all I think that most of that is probably just journalists. You can see that journalists and probably blue check marks on Twitter are going to fill up this. So not a lot of logistical thinking there. Over here at the PhDs, it's a different category, right? In order to be a PhD, you have to really put some critical thought in there. Master's is sort of just like an extended bachelor's degree. Not to poo-poo any master's degrees. Quite frankly, I think that almost all of these degrees are essentially useless now in general because of the state of our educational system. But you get my point here. It's about the people who will look down their noses at you and say, oh, we're sophisticated. Okay, like that woman on CNN the other day. Obama and his people, they're sophisticated. Okay, that's what she's talking about, this category. These are the sophisticated people out here that just do what they're told anytime that they're told to do it, and they think that they're smarter than everybody else, but they're not. They're a bunch of dummies because they got master's degrees. All right, let's take a look at the chat coming in from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Let's see what is here. We've got a nice one here from Venticus Prime. Oh, I almost botched that. Says, all right, two things. Well, technically three. I just figured how to enter a carriage. Okay. When I went to the VA hospital yesterday for my appointment, had to take off my personal mask for this thin, flimsy surgical mask. The reason being the Delta squad. Variant. There was no questions or anything about the type of mask I had or anything. Take from that what you will. Just wanted to point out about Cash Friday. People were talking about it in the YouTube chat. Participated by buying a pizza. Want some? It's a movement to support local small businesses by paying cash. Screw the big banks, data collection, and the lockdowns. Ugh. I love that. I love that. That's brilliant. Cash Friday. No, I've never heard of that. But I love that. Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I like the idea of alternative currencies, right? Not that you can escape sort of oversight by the IRS, especially now with the infrastructure bill, but I get your point, right? Pull yourselves out of the systems if you can, or barter or trade or any of those things. We've got Bumma Lickett says, 1905, really? Science has evolved since that date. Yeah, certainly has. Good to see you, Bumma Lickett. We have informed consent says, a vaccine mandate violate the right of informed consent. I see a lot of Nazi words in here. All right, so I can't read that one. There's too many controversial things there. See the Veil says, oh my God, seriously, mandates and passports. The unvaccinated are the problem. What? How many immigrants come across the border illegally infected with COVID under Biden's blessings? The immigrants are responsible for the outbreaks. Pfizer, Merck, other pharmas are not responsible for their failures. Not to mention these companies. All right, so some medical stuff there. Small businesses in New York, under the new mayor's decision, are mandating that small businesses have to turn away customers. The small businesses need to be compensated by the city when they're required to work for the mayor's police. Reminds me of a plumber that is holding a toilet brush and says, bend over. Yeah, that's right. Right. If the mayor's office is going to deputize all of the employees of all the restaurants, of all the bars, of all the gyms to be your little mini dictators, excuse me, sir, I have to check your vaccine. Mayor DeBlasio said so. And so now you're working not for the business, you're working for DeBlasio. Well, you should be compensated for that. Otherwise, you're working for free, aren't you? Or are you just their slave now at that point? We have Nadarb says, this is, okay, so let's see that. So that's on Hunter's. All right, we have another one here from Drearier Spider says, Barnes talks about Jacobson often. Difference is that the case surrounded a smallpox outbreak where the vaccine had been in use safely for over a century. The only penalty was a $5 fine. Jacobson also led to Buck versus Bell, forced sterilization, and Korematsu, Japanese internment camps. Oh, and Trump appointing Barrett over Lagoa was the worst decision of his presidency. Yeah. Yeah, she's going to be just like Kavanaugh, who's, a Federalist guy. So that's very interesting. Yeah. And bad legal precedent is overturned all the time. So that alone is just not an argument. Oh, there's an old case that says so. Yeah, well, there's an old case that approved of segregation. Do you want to bring that back? Do you want to bring back the case that said separate water fountains are okay and separate but equal is okay? Because maybe we should, if this is going to be what's happening right now. Separate but equal. Vaxxed get access to New York City, but the unvaxxed don't. Well, maybe we'll make them their own separate New York City and we'll call it separate but equal again, which is sort of where we're going, isn't it? We have here, Sergeant Bob says, overreaching government is a big reason we're coming to Arizona and not Oregon, as was the prior plan. Problems everywhere, but Arizona tries to keep our freedoms. We're doing what we can here, Sergeant Bob. It's the last election was disappointing. We'll see if that really turned out the way that it did, though. And I'm looking forward to welcoming you to Arizona. Be Brave says, so the next thing I expect out of ACB is upholding Roe versus Wade. Makes perfect sense in a clown world. Yeah, probably the staunchest Catholic woman ever. Right? Probably going to uphold it. It's okay because of whatever nonsense. NY Renal MD says, I thought it was the judiciary that could hold our country together. These silly rules are just going to separate us. Don't expect the government to give back this power when the emergency is over. It's an astute observation there, Doctor. I agree with you. They're not. It's here to stay. We've got Aircraft Mech says, That Looney Tune mayor said events with over 1,000. I guess those other places are exempt considering they are much smaller. Honestly, she might have been hungover. I think she started her press conference by saying, I was out late last night for my birthday. So that's what they do in San Francisco. John Halgren says, elections change lawmakers who ultimately change who sits on the bench. It's possible to take this back from the fearful. If we don't, we're essentially all under control of a doctor through a medical guardianship. Yeah, it's a sort of a medical, military, governmental, law enforcement complex that keeps you just totally locked down. Remember, the medical community that was responsible for sterilization thought they were right. History will get this right. FYI, was just in Georgia. They are crazier than that one Florida man. Are they? Are they, John? Well, I'll have to take your word for that. I see most of the headlines I see are like Florida man, is eaten by an alligator. Florida man launches a fridge into the low Earth orbit. And you go, what the hell is going on in Florida? There's just wild stuff happening there. But I'll have to keep my eye on Georgia. Georgia has a lot of crazy stuff, but it's typically coming out of Raffensperger's mouth. We have Bumma Lickett says, okay, if a person contracted COVID who has developed immunity, why should they require that person to be vaccinated with immunity from COVID? Saying that formula milk is better than breast milk. Yeah, I think it's that conversation about what Bumma Lickett is bringing up is this idea. Why are they not talking about natural immunity, right? If you had the coronavirus and you presumably have antibodies for that, you should have some level of immunity. That's not even in the conversation. It's either you're vaxxed or unvaxxed. It's very black and white, and it's not that simple, is it? The same people who scream to us about science are not really, they're kind of missing a key component of all that. Sabdi is here, says, I saw a video clip today of a small business owner who was stating that she already has a hard time getting employees. Now she has to require them to get vaccinated as well. Yeah, it's so burdensome on small businesses. And, businesses are going to respond to this. They're just going to, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just not going to participate. We're not going to have a restaurant anymore. Already can't find staff. We're just going to do something different. Go virtual, go digital. The whole world's going to change because of this stuff. It already has. Amy Coney Barrett is a joke, says, why I am not surprised. She's an authoritarian. Jacobson allowed for vaccine mandates. That was precedent for Buck versus Bell. Buck versus Bell was precedent for Korematsu. Logical conclusion of vaccine mandates is terrifying. I know. And they're going to just continue to allow it. Unfortunately, I think so. We have here Soul Viking says, I wonder if Mayor Looney Tunes is requiring all of the homeless who are crapping all over the streets and sidewalks will be mandated to have hepatitis vaccines due to their behaviors. How about all the citizens exposed to the filthy environment be required? Disgusting and dangerous slippery slope. Maybe she will consult with Legal Wonder Chase. Soul Viking. San Francisco was one of my favorite towns in the whole stinking country, right? It's beautiful when it's not being dumped all over. It's too bad what happened to that whole state, honestly. We have here, Sergeant Bob says, error, DeBlasio is not the most racist mayor. Title belongs to Lightfoot of Chicago. She's very racist also. It's hard. There's so many of them. It's really hard to tell. Hard to keep track of them all. Want to Know says, states of Washington and Oregon have two governors trying to outdo each other. Vaccine and the mask almost required everywhere. They're going to shut down hospitals, fire workers next month. Gosh. Oh my gosh. All right. These are getting bad. John Sesko, not the comments, the conclusions. John Sesko says, if we are going to fix this country, then we need to drag these politicians. Can't say that, John. Can't say that. We have over here, Thunder7 says, the world is now run by the Nazis. They are building concentration camps in the unvaccinated. The entire Nazi regime is run by the Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum. That's from Thunder7. Yeah, I don't know about any of that. I'll take your word for it. We have Nadarb says, so here is the massive difference between 1905 and smallpox. In 1800, most of England already vaccinated. 105 years of observation. It's barely been 105 days on brand new technology. 105 years is a big difference. ACB should be ashamed of ourselves. Yeah. It's Medical Express there. There's a link if you want to throw that into your browser. Thank you for that, Nadarb. Appreciate it. Over here we have Informed Consent says, remember the concept of informed consent required people to be informed and consent to the treatment. If someone was coerced to give consent for sex, it's rape. Considering the vaccine mandates take people's rights away unless they are vaccinated, which constitutes coercion, The implications are horrible. Yeah, informed consent, it's a pretty obvious thing to me, right? That this is troubling. Now, other people, they're not able to make that causal connection. They just say, it's just a shot, just put it in your arm, who cares? Well, it's more complicated than that. We're talking about liberties. We're talking about mandates. Okay, I have said on this channel, I don't have any particular qualms or any preference on the vaccine or not. I have a problem with the mandation of it, with the clamping down. They're threatening to prevent you from traveling from one state to another unless you show your passports. Your vaccine passports. It's disgusting. We have NY says that a vaccine mandate is absolutely unnecessary. The decision to vaccinate is an individual one and it should be an informed one. That's from the good doctor, NY Renal MD in the house. I agree completely with that. If you want to get it, talk to your doctor and get it. If you don't want to get it, I'd still recommend talk to your doctor and then don't get it, right? But it's not mandatory, or shouldn't be. Pato says, I like your analogy on the snowball rolling downhill now that the Democrats are being vindicated by the courts on the mandates. What's to stop them from taking more rights? All the governors have to do is declare a state of emergency because of gun crime. And poof, there goes your Second Amendment. Yeah, all of it. All of it now. Because everything that you do is touched by the coronavirus. Everything. And the CDC has already gobbled up power that they can basically take your property over. They've had it for 18 months now. They can just continue to extend it indefinitely. So, well, if the CDC now can control your property rights, well, why can't they control all of these other rights? We already see COVID crimes now coming out. Now people are going to be fearful that they get charged with a crime and thrown through the criminal justice system. Do you know where that goes? It's not good. It's not good at all. We have over here, Want to Know says, what language to learn? Spanish for work, shopping and ordering food. Talking to the next door neighbor. Spanish is a good one. I'm working on mine. John Halgren says, you're on fire tonight. Keep it up. Thanks, John. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for the comment. Love it. We have Sweet Po Te To says, I could be incorrect, but I believe that there are no known animal infections with smallpox. A couple of snow leopards just got COVID, though. I think the case that many state entities don't cite doesn't match the situation here. That the case that they cite doesn't match the situation here. Certainly, I agree with that, right? I went through some of these factors yesterday, but there are a lot of different reasons why people might have doubts about the vaccine. Many of them were caused by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris back in October of 2020 when they thought that Donald Trump was going to unveil the vaccine. They were screaming about it. I wouldn't take it. I don't trust it. So they're part of the problem, along with the mixed messaging, the bad messaging from their own administration and their own CDC. And there was another doctor who talked about animal reservoirs. I don't know if that applies to smallpox. I think that's maybe what you're talking about, Sweet Po Te To. It's a good comment. Thank you for that. Nice to see you. We have over here another one from Gurchan says, I am able to handle the fact that we are slaves to a money system and that we are being lied to by the government. But now we are talking about injecting our kids. This is where I draw the line, Rob. So what is your advice as a lawyer? I can't give you legal advice on this show, of course, as the Supreme Court does not stop it. You think a patriot parent will just let it happen? Well, you know, I certainly can't give you legal advice on this show because I don't know your specific legal situation, and that's not what this show is about anyways. But, certainly my answer on these questions is just to, we see a lot of this stuff happening around us, okay? We have to remember now that it's very easy for us to end up like the man in Plato's cave, right? That we're just looking at all these shadows on the wall of all these things that the governments are doing, but it might not be happening here locally, right? It might not actually be something that's taking place in your neighborhood. And you have more impact locally. You have more representation if it's one person out of 50,000 in your local city versus one person out of 377 million in your federal government. And so you can impact things more locally. And so all of the, the moms you see speaking out at the school boards, the people that you see just, I'm not going to put the mask on. I'm just going to create a little bit of friction. The people who are, making some changes in the world, I think that's essentially all that we can do right now, right? Get engaged, speak out, voice your opinion, try to rally people to, to your line of thinking in an attractive way, not a pushy way. We talk about attraction, not promotion. Live a good life. Be at peace, know what your values are, and live well, and people will come and be a part of what they see. They'll say, that person's got it together. They have their things in order, and I want more of that. What are they doing that sounds good to me? And That's how you'll win people to your favor. But other than that, it's going to be a long push here. They are clamping down every single day all around the country. Again, we've already been through this. So I think that's all I've got for you on that, Gert-Jan. I hope that helps a little bit. We have over here a couple more. Vienticus Prime says, I'm looking forward to hospitals being so overwhelmed again that we can get more dancing TikTok nurse videos. Oh, I know, really, really desperate times that they all had to choreograph, 50 different nurses who are all overweight and, whatever. Three Girlies says, I heard someone saying that checking vaccine cards would not be any different than checking ID for alcohol. Can you expound on that idea? How would checking someone's vaccine card be any different than checking someone's ID for alcohol? Well, they're two totally different things, right? One is your personal private medical information. One is buying alcohol for recreational purpose. So two different entire, justifications for it. The other part of the problem here is that you're talking about sort of mandating a vaccine and a card in order to engage in your regular basic liberties, like leaving your home and going and doing anything. So that's part of the problem, right? It's part of what they are limiting in order to get you to comply with their new regulations. So you now cannot do the same things that you used to go and do, right? You can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to a bar. You cannot go to a gym unless you have to show your card. It is limiting every single area of your life almost without a limiting principle. And so that's one of the most fundamental concerns that I have. The other concern, of course, is that alcohol is something that you voluntarily put into your body, and we're regulating that for small children. This is a situation where the government is injecting an experimental vaccine into your body that does very complicated things that are still being studied. And the CDC themselves are still changing the guidance on it. Well, breakthrough cases are rare. Well, now they're common. Well, this will prevent you from catching COVID. Well, not really. You can still get it, but you don't transmit it. Well, now you can transmit it, right? So there's a lot of unknowns about all of that, whereas alcohol has been something that we've had a precedent for many, many different years. And we're talking, I understand the analogy. I understand what people are trying to do. I think it is intellectually dishonest for those reasons. But I mean, you could go through and just list out all of the different biases. If you actually go to Wikipedia, you can go out there and take a look at some of the logical fallacies that exist in any of these comparisons. Maybe I'll make a video about that. Great question, Three Girlies. Those are my concerns. Sergeant Bob is here, says Oregon has been calling everything an emergency for a long, long time. Yeah, they just keep extending it. It goes into whatever you want. We have London Breed says, your comments are regretful, Rob. I had a long night last night. Had to have my hair and nails done today. I know, sorry, that was London Breed. That was the mayor of San Francisco. Well, happy birthday, London Breed. I hope you had a great birthday, but how about you take your mandates and cancel them? How about that? Just delete them. All right, those were great questions from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Let's take a look over at some super chats on this segment. Phil Hoffman jumped in here, says, I love the show, Rob. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. Very nice comment. Thank you for your support there. Marine 2007 says, I wonder how many people actually know what their HIPAA rights are, let alone know what they are. Is this not treading very closely to violating HIPAA? So I'm not really sure what specifically you're talking about. But my understanding is, so there are going to be complexities here, right? But if you're voluntarily sort of going to a place and this is a regulation that they have in order for you to access that place, it's a little bit different than somebody sort of like your employer, asking you about some of that information and then making decisions based on the information that's provided. One is sort of mandatory, one is sort of voluntary. So if you want to go to a coffee shop and they say, hey, I need to know your medical information, and you volunteer it, you say, yeah, I'm vaccinated. And they say, okay, great, come on in. Okay, that's a voluntary conversation. It's not a forced thing. It's not a hidden thing. They're not accessing or violating your medical information because you're just volunteering it to them. And if you don't want to give it to them, you don't have to. You can just leave, right? This is the same concept that the Office of Legal Counsel specified in their memo, talking about the fact that private businesses can, in fact, mandate even experimental vaccines. Because if you don't want to take it, guess what? don't work there anymore. That's your recourse. So there are no HIPAA concerns. The OLC has already defined that for us. They said, no, it can even be experimental and you can still mandate it. And that's where this is going, right? That all of those protections are sort of no longer even relevant. Good question. We have, that was from Maureen. We have Kareem165 here, says, too many people I speak to here say the situation still has not affected me personally, so it doesn't bother me. Very nearsighted mentality. They make sure only to upset 5% of the people at a time. That's from Kareem. Situation has not affected me personally, so it doesn't bother me. Okay. It probably will. I mean, I think it's hard to say that. I think COVID has sort of caught kind of everything in it. All right, we have Josh Rowe says, case law from 1905 is a false equivalency. Smallpox had a mortality rate of about 30%, was possible to eradicate because humans are the only vector that the virus can infect. Okay, so that was the animal repository conversation that I saw. The idea being that it is possible for smallpox to get to smallpox 0 because it doesn't live in other animals. COVID and other respiratory viruses do. That's why you can never get to 0 COVID. Right? It's always going to be around out there. It's always going to be in animals and other things, crawling animals around us all the time. And so unless we sort of wipe out everything, which some people might want to do, we're never going to get to COVID 0. So at that point, it would just be mitigation, really. Treatment and mitigation. I agree with you. I think it is a false equivalency, though. Eddie Oliver says, everybody keeps talking about the medical community and forced sterilization. I would like to politely remind everybody about full frontal lobotomies. That's from Eddie Oliver. Thank you for that, Eddie, and for chiming in with that. Yeah, maybe that's coming. Maybe we're all just going to get our lobotomies just lopped off. Eddie Oliver says, also, being a child of the 70s, I very well remember thalidomide babies, again, all medical approved. They all followed the science. Yeah, because they're looking out for you. That's why you just have babies with their heads, completely deformed and basically dead. Linda Kidd says, at least 63 people on Martha's Vineyard have tested positive for COVID since Barack Obama's maskless 60th birthday bash. The most cases on the island since April, per the Daily Mail. Yeah, I saw that headline, Linda. Sounds like a super spreader event, doesn't it? Uh-oh. I wonder if anybody in the media is going to talk about that. Probably not. Thanks for the comment there, Linda. And then Kareem165 says, you missed my comment on locals, Rob. Well, Kareem, you may have submitted it out of order. So just send it through again, because it's hard for me to go back and sort through all of the questions. So it's just submit it again. And I think I'm caught up, so I'll get to it. We've got, want to know, a couple more on this one. Says, why does Congress not vote on these mandates? It seems 6 months emergency orders just keep going. Well, it's because the executive branch just doesn't care anymore. They just don't care. The Supreme Court said, if you're going to extend the eviction moratorium, you need congressional legislation and approval to do it. And they said, we don't care. We're going to do it anyways. Joe Biden said, yeah, I know it's not constitutional, but at least it's going to buy us a few more months. And in fact, it might buy him another year. Honestly, by the time this works its way up again to the Supreme Court. So we'll see. Not good. We have over here another one from Sweet Potato. Says, yes, animal reservoir. Sorry for the typo earlier. Was trying to get my submission over before you change topic. So if a white-tailed deer poops in your yard, maybe your dog eats it, gets COVID, your dog gives you COVID, mandatory vaccination, stop the spread, don't make sense. Also, false claims from these governors. Yeah, thank you, Sweet Potato. That's what I was thinking about, the animal reservoirs. Over here, Jeremy Matrita says, just because something is legal doesn't mean it's ethical, moral, or should be done. There's a lot of those types of laws on the books now. And Kareem just submitted his question. Here it is. Says, I don't know if you heard today that Canada will soon require all air passengers to be fully vaccinated. Nope. I did not see that. Does this imply that unvaccinated Canadians will no longer be able to come to the USA since the land border is still closed? Will these vaccine mandates be permanent, meaning we'll never be able to travel to the U.S. unless we comply? I do not know, Kareem. I know a lawyer up there. Her name is Melissa Vale, I think, in Canada. We refer all of our Canadian immigration questions to her. She tells us what to do. We say, what the hell is going on up there in Canada? And she says, this is what we're doing now. And I said, all right, fine. Because Canada is kind of insane with a lot of criminal laws. Like if you have a DUI in the United States, they will not let you in the country. Like they're like, we don't want you. You got a DUI down there. So it's a really difficult process. So on the back end, I don't know what Canada is going to do with any of that. But yeah, maybe that is the case. You will not be able to travel unless you get the vaccine, which will probably happen, right? You'll probably see that on airlines. We'll see. Great questions, a lot of great questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And again, on YouTube, thank you for all of those lovely super chats. We had Kareem, Linda, Eddie again, Josh, Maureen, Kareem again, and Phil and others chatting away over there. Thank you for all of your continued support here on the channel. Really much appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching. Before you head out, I want to just remind you that I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, we've got a long history of helping good people facing criminal charges to find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. Our phone number for a free case evaluation is 480-787-0394. You can also find us online at www.rrlawaz.com. We can help with any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona, things like DUI, drug offenses, misdemeanor offenses. And we can also help with clearing up old case records, like expunging cases or making sure that you can restore your rights so that you can vote again or possess a firearm again or apply for some other federal benefits. We can remove mugshots off the internet. Basically, anytime that you or somebody you know or love is in trouble with the law in the state of Arizona, we have an amazing team of people. We would just love the opportunity to help. And our phone number, of course, 480-787-0394. And if you don't need any legal services, that's a very good thing. But you may be interested in some informational offerings so that you are prepared if you do have to deal with the police. And of course, I want to invite you to head on over to gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. You'll notice here, I've got several different trainings that are available, including the law enforcement interaction training. This is the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's one rule you need, 2 questions that the police can ask of you, and 3 responses if they ask you a problematic question. So that's available now. You can also get a load at my personal productivity system here called Existence Systems. Fun little course. And then we have here, if you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check out this program. We are meeting twice every month. Again, all of this over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. And if none of that sounds any good to you, well, just go ahead and give us a follow, because I'm working on some other products and some other offerings. And of course, if you have not already done so, want to invite you one more time to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's where you can support the show, and it's where we can connect. We've got monthly Zoom meetings and a lot of other goodies coming up. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your love and support. I will see you on the next one.